Well, welcome you all, and thank you for joining us today for this very important conversation following the death of George Floyd and a tragedy and murder that sparked nationwide protests. Many organizations released statements opposing police brutality and promising to work toward a more inclusive environment for all. 1 year later, we're going to have a very important conversation about how much progress has been made. Tammy Pitts, Shelley Davis Boyd, Rina Risper, and State Representative Sarah Anthony are here today to discuss how our community responded, what's changed, and how we can hold ourselves and others accountable in their pursuit of racial justice and equity moving forward. Our discussion today is going to be moderated by Dr. Felicia Blow. Felicia is an accredited public relations professional and the 2021 National PRSA Chair-elect. She's currently the Associate Vice President for Development at Hampton University. Felicia, thank you so much for moderating this important conversation for us today.
My pleasure indeed, my pleasure. Yesterday being the anniversary of this truly remarkable occasion in our history makes this such an important conversation for communicators, for PRSA members, for non-members, for those who are just interested in justice for all. So, few ground rules, and then I'm going to introduce this amazing group of folks who are going to be bringing us a very lively conversation because I've asked them to. Okay, so we want this to be real, authentic. So here are the ground rules. First, for the first 45 minutes or so, it will be a conversation amongst this panel. And for the last part of the conversation, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see something called Q&A. In that box, we're going to ask you to input your questions. We're going to attempt to answer as many questions as possible, but this wonderful panel has done something else that's amazing and remarkable. They have said, if you'd like more information, insights, input from every last one of them, including me, their names and email addresses are in the chat. Shelly, I'm going to ask you to put yours in the all panelists and attendees chat, but it looks like Tammy, Representative Anthony, and hopefully she'll let us call her Sarah in a little bit, and others are making sure they get their information there. So to get started, we, as you know, with public relations practitioners, strategists, we always have a plan. We know what we're going to do from this minute to the next minute to the next. But I wanted to flip the script a little bit and ask every, someone said turn my volume up. Can you hear me okay now? Can you hear me now? It could be your computer, because I think I'm plenty loud. I don't want to get too loud, Tammy. But at any rate, I want to hear from every last one of these individuals about what has changed and what hasn't changed from your point of view since George Floyd's murder. That's a big, weighty ask. It doesn't have anything to do with communications. It may have to do with your church, your home, whatever you do, whatever you choose to do. But I want to get some personal perspective. And I'll start. And Shelly, I'm going to come to you after I start. I have to tell you that I'm more afraid today for my 19-year-old son than I ever was. And what has changed for me is I ask him every time he goes out, where are you going? Call me along the way. Do not speed. If you encounter anything, do not resist. Hands on the steering wheel. I have this litany of things. And then I don't wear my cross on my sleeve, but I'm a praying woman. And then I start praying. From the moment he leaves my eyesight to the time I see him back. I have gotten more involved and engaged through my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Ski, there is Representative Anthony. We'll tell you all about that in a little bit. But for me, not much has changed other than it's gotten worse. Shelly, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Blow. I would agree with you as the
Please
mother.
call me Felicia. Felicia.
Okay. Thank you, Felicia. As a mother of boys, definitely there's a fear there for my kids. I would say like just a general overall exhaustion and a bit of fear for myself. I didn't used to be a person that wondered when I went out and about places if people felt ill will towards me. And I would say that that's definitely something that in this divided world that we live in that I do think about. And that's not a place where I like to be. But I would say for me particularly, I have found myself, and I'm a pretty straight shooter, stand up sort of gal. I stand up more for folks, you know, and not just BIPOC, any marginalized group. I am there to stand up and be an ally. And that's something that I have really ingrained in my kids. Like my expectation of you as, you know, future leaders of the world and as leaders of your, you know, at your schools or what have you, is that we don't stand by and watch. We don't stand by and watch folks be picked on or treated poorly. And if you can't stand up and say something yourself because you're afraid or what have you, then my expectation is that you let a grown up know, because I'm at a zero tolerance space anymore. That's just where
Awesome. Love it. Taking action in your home. Tammy, what's changed for you? What have you seen either intrinsically, extrinsically since the murder of George Floyd?
So, thinking about that question, what's changed for me is I feel like things have gotten worse, quite frankly. Again, I echo what you said, Felicia. I have two Black sons. They're 18 and 22. And I'm constantly worried about where they are, that my oldest son is 6'2", and people might see him as a threat. And he's the sweetest giant you would ever meet. So for me, I feel like my change is that I feel like I'm living more in fear, but then I also feel like I'm not taking anything anymore either. I'm standing up for myself. I'm speaking out when I see injustice. As a corporation, I feel like we overall, just not my corporations, but others have put more emphasis on DEI. So to me, that's a good change in a way. I feel like we've seen companies like Disney remove shows that have been there for years and years that had racism and racist tropes in it. So, I mean, we did get an officer convicted here, a month ago. We have companies actually saying Black Lives Matter. You couldn't get that a couple years ago. So I feel like there has been some change, but then on the other end, not enough. And then there's also people who are more emboldened in their racism today.
That's fair. And I appreciate your recognizing and helping us see there has been something good happen. What about you, Rina? What do you think? Oh, and forgive me, guys, I missed one big thing. After Rina and Representative Anthony go, I was so anxious to get into the real meat of the conversation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of them. So then we'll get into the questions. But Rina, go ahead.
I think that the conversation has been open now. And as a result of the George Floyd situation, that people are realizing, one, that Black people are not one monolithic structure, and two, that we can have the conversation without, i.e., being aggressive or without being assertive or without being, threatening. A lot of times when you're having a conversation with someone about issues that impact BIPOC individuals, they automatically get defensive. So what I'm finding now is that people are actually wanting to have that conversation, and they're really wanting to break it down and dissect it. As far as the negative aspect, I'm seeing a lot more people who are just, dogged in their opinions about racism and their opinions about discrimination. But one of the best things that have come out of this is that Black is now with a capital B.
Black, soul power to the people. Soul power. James Brown. Black is beautiful. All that stuff, right? just a little levity, okay? Representative Anthony, how do you see things? I have a feeling you have a different lens you're looking at things through.
Well, thank you, Sora, Felicia. And you can absolutely call me Sarah in this space. It's all good. That's the title that's going to carry when I'm done with politics. I will always be Sarah. So happy to be in this space in that way. After the murder of George Floyd, it kind of felt like going to the gym after New Year's, in which everybody and their mama was there, right? I mean, folks who don't know how to use the machines, everyone bought their new Lululemon, BLM, gear and their woke, Peloton stuff. Everybody was there, right? It was packed. My Little Machine, for folks who have been in this space around DEI, who have used an equity lens to shape their experiences, to inform their workplaces, to folks who live it and breathe it every day. We're literally in the gym thinking, man, all these people are on my treadmills and they're not using it right and they're just trying to be cute and how long is this gonna last? And I feel like now folks have trickled out of the gym, right? They've taken their gym selfies, they're back to their old ways. We've kind of done the symbolic stuff. They may have lost the 2 pounds of bigotry and racism and sexism, and then they've added 15 more. We are, I think, there. Folks, if you were in it and you were really there, if you were really willing to make the change and lose the weight, you're still in the gym. But it has trickled off, which is unfortunate because we all know that the 2020 year of racial unrest, we knew that the media would move on. We knew that folks would create those perfectly curated Black Lives Matter statements and do the things and talk the talk. But for those of us who have lived this work for a while, we knew that the gym would slowly get back to the pace that it normally is. And so I think that's unfortunate. And while I am always an optimist and I have seen change, I've seen more courageous conversations, I haven't seen as many of the tools and resources to sustain those conversations. So you have many African Americans who are on Zooms and in conversations in boardrooms and are vulnerable and pouring out and sharing experiences and are left with nothing, are left to just let those feelings and experiences lay there. And you're also left with many, Caucasian brothers and sisters who are involved in these conversations and are eager to do the work and have and have tangible resources to move the work forward, and are also not given the tools to be empowered to do the work. So I think it's a very vulnerable time right now. There is definitely a shift, but there's so much work to do. And the last thing I'll say is, my lens is always, I'm an auntie. I'm not a mom. I don't have Black sons. I got a Black daddy and Black brothers. But I think so much of the emphasis has also been on Black men that we often forget Black women and the Breonna Taylors and the Sandra Blands, and the fact that when I'm not in my work clothes and in my Superwoman suit, I'm going to the store with a hoodie on in my Black car,
all caps,
and I am just as vulnerable. And so, I just like to lift that up in spaces as well, that
well said.
It is a vulnerable time right now. We are in a time of transition.
The thing that I like that you said, and we're going to get into when we talk about advocacy after I formally introduce you all, is vulnerability. I don't know it all. I'm not the spokesperson for all Black people in America or on the planet. I get it wrong as much as I get it right. I do not paint every white person as a Jim Crow racist. So if we can figure out a way to share our vulnerabilities and recognize that we all are coming forward with unconscious biases and meet each other in the middle, I think we will be so much forward. So I'm going to mention something after I do this, because I have to do this. You all are so amazing. Representative Sarah Anthony is serving her second full term representing the 68th House District, which encompasses the city of Lansing and Lansing Township. In November 2018, she was sworn into a partial term after filling a special election, making history as the first African American woman to serve as state representative in Lansing's history. Representative Anthony is chair of the House Democratic Caucus, having been appointed to that position in 2018, and she serves as vice chair of the Progressive Women's Caucus and the first vice chair of the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus. Welcome, Representative Anthony. Tammy Pitts, if you can wave for us, Tammy. Well, they can read as well. Tammy is Director of Communications at Michigan Nonprofit. Tammy has an extensive background in journalism, media relations, social media strategy, and brand management. Prior to joining Michigan Nonprofit, she served as senior producer of News 10 Today at WILX for more than 17 years, where she coordinated content for a 2-hour daily broadcast. And most recently, she was a communications editor for the Dean of International Studies and Programs at Michigan State University. Welcome, Tammy. Next, we have Shelley Davis Boyd, and she is a seasoned leader with more than 20 years of experience in a wide variety of areas. She is the Director of Communications, PR, and Marketing at the Michigan Association of School Boards, a very critical role. And her background includes management, business development, communications, sales, marketing, planning, goal setting, and implementation. Thank you for being here, Shelly. And last but not least, we have Rina Risper, who is owner, thank you for waving there, Rina, owner of New Citizens Press, a bi-weekly multicultural newspaper based in Lansing. She also is the executive director of the New Citizens Press Community Action Network. Its mission is to raise awareness of stopping violence, including domestic violence, promoting literacy programs, and all forms of the arts. She previously hosted The New Perspective, which is a podcast radio show on Business Michigan Network that showcased businesses in the Black community and beyond. And again, audience, this is going to be fantabulous. Please place your questions in Q&A. We're going to get them to them at the end of the conversation. But I'm going to start with accountability and advocacy. And each of you play a role, and we've already gone over some ground rules in that this is not just Felicia asking questions, this is an organic conversation. So you all play important roles as advocates in your communities. What does accountability mean to you? Shelly, I'll start with you and we'll go around the horn.
Yeah, to me, accountability is really walking your talk, right? And so I talked about, not just being accountable for people in the BIPOC community, but broadly and looking to be an ally across all walks of life. And that's what it really is to me.
And you talked about accountability earlier when you said you stand up for the little guy or
Right.
the little gal or whomever is you're feeling is injustice and reaping injustice. So we're going to get to some specifics more and lean into that question. But Tammy, what are your thoughts on accountability and what it means?
My thoughts are, I echo what Shelley says. For me, it starts with being authentic, the way we treat people, ourselves, each other. I feel like now is the time for everyone, but white people especially, to have difficult conversations with themselves about their own roles in racial oppression. Sometimes we really can't see ourselves, and sometimes we can be oppressing, or people can be oppressing a person of color and honestly not even be aware of it. And I feel like, even with all the mass protests in the wake of George Floyd's murder, we have yet still to see white people as a whole, overall, stand up and demand and fight for an end to racial inequality, no matter the cost. I mean, we just need to sit with that for a moment.
You really
more
believe
than
that, Tammy? You think that in your mind's eye? Because let me give you the reason I really want to seek to understand your point of view. The Black Lives Matter movement, to me, went across race, class, age, religion, ethnicity. So much so that BLM is not doesn't have the connotation it used to. So help me understand what you mean by that.
I feel like for me, it's more than just issuing, it's more for me than issuing blanket statements or saying that I'm not a racist. I feel like stopping racism isn't on the shoulders of me or BIPOC or people of color. We didn't really well, actually, none of us here today created the hate or divide, but it's what we're living with now. So I feel like it's truly upon white people to serve as allies to BIPOC, to join the fight in any little way that they can. And I mean, and I can go on, but there's multiple ways that we can all help. But for me, when I think about being accountability, for me, it just starts with being authentic.
I appreciate that. And you're letting me come back and ask the follow-up. I appreciate that greatly. And that's the kind of conversation we need to have, quite frankly, those courageous conversations. So Rina, your thoughts?
Accountability for me is just about responsibility, and it's about integrity. A lot of people say that they want to be accountable, but there's no integrity in their words. I look at what happened to George Floyd, and I think about, what's going on with our Black transgendered community. I think about what's going on in our community with the crime rate that's rising. So when I look at the word accountability, it, for me, encompasses integrity in what all of us are doing, including the BIPOC community.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to pivot to you, Representative Anthony, and talk about accountability from a governmental perspective. What do our governments, local, state, federal, owe us, the broad community, in the area of accountability on this issue of race and racism and injustice?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say this, as an elected official, I have to be accountable, right? The people hire me. They send me to the halls of power with a mandate. So every vote that I take, every statement I put out, my attendance record, all of that is related to folks holding me accountable to what I said I would do when I was campaigning, what my guiding principles are and values are. If those do not align when I actually, am working in the Capitol, it is the citizens' job to hold me accountable. That is the symbiotic relationship that we have. But I will say this, I think that 2020 was really the year for courageous conversations. I think conversations are over. I think we need to start having courageous actions, right? Actions that actually align with those, again, the vulnerability, the conversations, the water cooler chit chats. I'm kind of over conversations now, right? We now need receipts, right? The budget cycle in your corporation, in your government, have you allocated funds? Have you started to hire and sustain? Have you, mandated and started to adjust systems around dismantling systemic racism? Conversations are done. And I think the last thing I'll say about accountability is that in many ways, in my view, it requires relationship, right? Again, it's easy to do with government officials because your relationship is one that is citizen and elected, but it's very hard to hold a stranger accountable, right? You talked a little bit about your faith. In the Christian community, we can hold each other accountable because if we say you're a believer, like I'm a believer, and I see you doing something that maybe doesn't align with our faith, as a sister in the Christian faith, I can kind of, pull your coattail and say, is that what are you want to, you're not walking the walk, as we both have said that we do. So I think that it's hard, and I think where we get a little bit, we miss the mark is trying to hold complete strangers accountable, or folks that we haven't built a genuine relationship with first. But if you are coworkers, if you are people in your family or your neighbors, you have a natural relationship that you can build upon to then start to have those, to hold folks accountable. But if you are trying to hold folks accountable that you have had zero relationships with, it's just hard. It's just hard.
In that way, and I want to just lean in on this for a second. It's not one of our prepared questions, but for me, this whole, if I know you, if I get to know you, it's harder for you to curse me out, to hate me, to just by the color of my skin. So for me, I have an accountability to when somebody is extending an olive branch to have the conversation. I think that is the accountability that we as a set of diverse communities owe to ourselves, not to someone else. We need to seek change by helping people seek to understand. I do think on the other side of it, yes, there is a huge accountability. What's that joke? You had a 400-year, Chris Rock said, you had a 400-year head start. So I won't go the rest of the joke that he made. How do we balance that accountability? How do we tell people, no, I'm not looking for 40 acres and a mule. No, I know you didn't personally put me in slavery, but yeah, you do have some responsibility, because when you start talking about, Sarah, and I'm gonna come to you with Rina with this question. When you start talking about budget investments, people think of affirmative action, EEO, handouts, welfare. That's not what it is. Again, you had a 400-year head start on me. But how do we bridge that? Because I agree. I think that is needed, but how do we bridge it, Rina?
You know, being in the publishing industry for 20 years and having to compete against mostly Caucasian individuals has been kind of interesting. I will say that sometimes that I have been bullied by white people. I have been told that I'm less than by white publishers. I have been asked to join with white publishers because I'm just not good enough to be by myself, but I'm still kicking. And you know what? I'm still kicking, and not only am I still kicking, but it's interesting how the pandemic has made me more God-fearing and more universe-fearing. And if I asked to wake up at 3 a.m. so that I could really have the time to edit something, I get up at 3 a.m. and then I edit something. But the most interesting thing is, from the public relations perspective, is that you will get 500 press releases from said corporation and $0. How do you expect us to survive as BIPOC publications without the money? And then on top of that, the marketing person and the advertising person, or the marketing PR person and the advertising person, act like they don't know each other. Well, that's not something that we do. We just put out the press releases. It's extremely important to recognize that if you are in public relations, that you need to have a good relationship with the people who are putting out the money for advertising, so that you can have a relationship with BIPOC media. BIPOC media is, barely getting by on a shoestring, according to the last statistics. We get 2% of Madison Avenue's money. That is all of us collectively together, 2%.
What do you think we ought to do to change that?
I think that advertising agencies and individuals who are in public relations and marketing should start vying for us to become a part of the ad buy. not the 10% of it or the pity buy. The pity buy is, you know, said company gets $1 million to advertise, and then they come to me with a $300 ad, and then they want me to print a press release, and then they want us to do social media advertisement. And my heart just hurts. My heart hurts when public relations individuals just throw me moldy breadcrumbs. It's like putting us all into the same corral. And then as minority media, we have to compete with one another for these moldy breadcrumbs.
Crabs in a barrel. Here's the thing, folks, that y'all peep that was actionable. That was something that we can take from this conversation today and use. Advocate for BIPOC media outlets. And Rina, if you have a PR person that tells you they don't know a marketing person, that's just shade to the nth degree. Everybody knows everybody. Shelly, I want to come to you and pivot a little bit. I do want to dig into that, what we can do, because I tend to be pragmatic and I have a bias to action, not talk. Rina, thank you for sharing that kernel, and those folks listening, I think are going to take advantage of that. How can organizations companies better support DE&I within their organizations? What should companies be doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, the statements, we've all seen them. I've put them out myself. And to me, it's like the chicken or the egg, right? So how do you bring in minority folks into your organization if you go to the website and there doesn't appear to be diversity, right? And so, you know, what do you do first? Because as a minority person, you're going to look at that and say, geez, do I fit in here? Just like, you know, kids, if they don't see teachers that look like them, they assume teaching isn't for them, right? And so is it the chicken or the egg? How do you support that? I mean, obviously the diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice programs are important, but also from a communications and marketing standpoint, showcasing a diverse group of people so that when folks come to your website or they see the things that you're putting out, they see themselves in there as part of it. And to me, that's an actionable first step. It's not like fire everyone that you have now and bring in a diverse group, right? That just doesn't work. But start to let people see themselves in your organization, because it matters and people know, like, okay, this is a friendly organization for people like me. I can see myself there. So that's a really easy first step, just in the materials you put out. Watch the language that you use. If you're saying she or he and not they, those are things that you want to consider as well.
It's tough. Because since I'm a little more than 29. I'll just say that. But adopting inclusive language protocols really is important. I said something, you guys, hey, straw man, I got to really fix that thing. And I recognize that. And that's what I mean by giving grace. Representative Sarah, I saw you nodding your head when Shelly was offering some thoughts about what companies should do to embrace DE&I. You want to add to that?
Shelley was spot on. I mean, like, I was just doing the amen corner to Shelley, but I mean, if I could just add, it has to start from the top. It has to start in leadership. If it is not infused and embedded from the top, whether it's a board, a CEO, an executive director, it doesn't trickle down. It is for naught. It is symbolic. It is window dressing. And for those of us who have been in the professional world for more than a day, we've seen that before, and it is deflating and exhausting. It's exhausting to be the token person on the campaign materials or the website, or for you to bring in one person of color and they're it, and they're expected to do diversity work and finances and, you know, do community stuff, and they're underpaid and they're undervalued. And when there is an issue related to racism or sexism, they're blamed because they didn't equip the business or company to avoid that, right? We've seen that before. That I call that like the 80s. That's like the affirmative action quota. That's stale, right? That's shoulder pads and fanny packs, right? Like some folks are still rocking it, but why? But why? So I think it has to start at
No
the top.
shade to the fanny packs, okay?
Right. I saw a Gucci one the other day, so I guess it's a thing. But you know, I think it has to start at the top, and really be infused and embedded in everything. I encourage every organization to do a well-resourced equity scan and provide resources for after the scan. So looking at, you know, all the HR materials, hiring practices, like
I put that in the chat,
right,
Sarah,
from the
because
top down. You got it.
what you said about tokenism is so true. It will, so folks listening, one of the things we share as public relations practitioners is your goal is to keep your companies and organizations out of hot water. If you do things that exacerbate that by representing them to be something they are not, that is doing nothing but shining a very negative spotlight. So someone asked me this question, and I've done a tremendous amount of D&I research and training over the past, you know, several years. And I asked you to take a look at the chat box, this culture survey. What are your employees internally say about how your organization is? What do they think? Then, what does your leadership look like? Sarah and Shelly said it. You don't want to have, forgive my phrase, a lily white senior team and you say you are a champion of diversity. No females, no one under the age of 50, all Caucasian. That is talking but not walking. Then get your HR to really do a formal workforce makeup survey. That is possible. And what this can lead to is you may have one that's all of one ethnicity, even gender, but establish a DEI committee. If you don't have one, if you don't have an ERG, an employee resource group, get one so that you don't have to hear people saying, well, I just don't have time to get around to it. Oh, we got so much other stuff. I don't have enough people on the team. Volunteer. I bet you there are employees in your organization that would say, I'd love to serve as a member of our company's DEI committee. Then start talking about this. I truly believe, I said it at the top of the program, it's hard for me to yell and scream at Tammy if I have a relationship with Tammy, because she and I are friends, we're colleagues, and I'm going to see her differently. So lectures, workshops, training consistently. This is what Rina talked about with regard to put your money where your mouth is. If this is of interest to you, put some money behind it, put some action behind it. Again, as you all heard, I have a bias to action, not just talk. And if you want to leave this conversation with some things you can do when you leave at 1 o'clock from today's conversation that you can take back to your CEO, make yourself look really good. These are things you all ought to do. Tammy, how do you feel about this whole conversation? And quite frankly, I'm going to ask you something that Jessica really wants us to pick up on. What steps can folks like her and others take to be anti-racist within an organization where you're working often against the role of protecting the brand? The way I understand that is, you know, we may not be everything that we say we are, but it's my responsibility to position that point of view outwardly. That's a hard you know, it's hard because we are not blacks, we're not hacks, we're not spinmeisters. That is not what we do. We are in a profession that can change the world. So, Tammy, I hate to put all that on you, but that's, you can take a piece of both of those.
I first wanted to piggyback off of the initial conversation. I agree with everything that was being said. I also feel like an action is, have you reached out to historically Black universities, colleges? Have you reached out there to find talent? There is diverse job boards out there. People often say to me, oh, I've actually been in sessions where people have said, we want to hire Black, we want to hire BIPOC, but no one applies. Well, are you doing the work? Are you actively going out to find them? Are you actively attracting them? When they come to your website, and this is a big one for me, when I'm considering whether or not to apply for a job, I do what that women have already discussed. I go and look at who works there, who the leadership is. And for me, when I decided to apply at Michigan Nonprofit Association, I went to the website and the first person I saw was Donna Murray Brown, a Black woman, as president and CEO. Safe space. Immediately I felt, wow, I can relax, this is safe, I can apply there. Wow, the president is a Black woman. She's gonna get me. So I just throw that out there because I feel like a lot of people are always trying to figure out what they should be doing. So take a look at your staff. You should not be promoting on International Women's Day, all white women are in your photo. I see that a lot in PR, and it's coming from a Black woman, frankly, bluntly, it's offensive. If you don't have the diverse staff, then don't try to participate in these events.
Well, it says this is what we want. Whether it was intentional or not, Tammy, what I pick up is this is who we are. How do you react to that?
And I feel, okay, so also taking that question and then also thinking of how other people can help. For me, be an ally, be supportive, speak up. Don't let me be the only one facing the firing squad, so to speak. If I tell you something in confidence, I see you as a safe person, don't run to HR with that. Don't run to a manager with that. Be that safe space. Black women especially, some of us, we go to work and from 9 to 5, we have to be this whole other person. We have to.
Can you explain that to the folks that don't understand what you're talking about?
We have to hold it in. We can't, some of us can't wear, I know when I worked in certain professions, our hair had to be a certain way for on air. We couldn't wear our braids or different things that we might have wanted to wear. We have to watch how we talk, because if I disagree with something and I state it in a tone of authority, all of a sudden I'm the angry Black woman. I'm angry all the time. I'm mad. I'm not mad, but that's a trope that has to stop. We cannot continue to label Black women as aggressive and angry. We should be able to be in leadership positions and lead.
The stereotyping of all of us, so
we are so disrespected. People will look me in the face and act surprised that I was a producer or I'm the director of communications. If they see me, I mean, Tammy could be white or Black. You just, it's not a Shaniqua or whatever you might associate. So when they see me, oh, she's the leader. Oh.
And you pick that up, right?
Immediately.
So folks, this is what we talk about with unconscious bias. What you also heard Tammy share is another clear takeaway. Again, I'm a pragmatist. She said, be an ally to your coworkers of color or minorities. There have been a couple of questions around the BIPOC community, invisible minorities. I have some points of view on that. I strong thoughts on that, but we all need to be supportive of one another. But does anyone else have points of view before I jump in and just wreck everything on the invisible minority? Raise your hand. So I'm going to jump in. Nobody wants to go there since I said that. Okay. I have this point of view of equating my blackness with your, da 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 da. When people see me, they see a minority. There's nothing else. They don't see gay. They don't see that I'm 50% Jewish. They don't see that I am from, that I may speak Spanish or so. When I was working on the PRSA DNI research, we spent 11 months talking to members in small group environments, focus groups, and doing quantitative studies. And there is this equivalency that is often sought around, different dimensions of diversity. Don't get me wrong. I don't want anybody to leave this conversation and think that I'm saying that one dimension is better or more than the other. But what I often got was, well, we need to do this for hearing impaired and vision impaired, and for the gay community, LGBTQ plus. That's just as important as the. But when we did the survey, we got empirical data from our members that said this. When I think about the dimensions of diversity, the first, numero uno, the first thing I think about is race and ethnicity. Why? It's because what you see, right? You can't see that somebody can't hear, right? But you can see if you are. And so, what do they say about people making judgments the first 10 seconds? Is that the. So
Faster
what I
than
try to
that.
say is not diminishing the other dimensions, right? But it's giving clarity of focus to what we need to focus on. Did you want to weigh in there, Shelly?
Yeah, just one thing, thinking about invisible folks. Think about when you say that DEI and J is important to your organization, that we're inclusive, all of these things. This is something we're going through right now. We're revamping our website. If we revamp our website and we don't make it ADA compliant, we're not walking our talk, right? So you need to think about those, can people access what you have through your website or other things? So those are not easy or not inexpensive.
They are not inexpensive. We're doing that at PRSA because one of the things we found is that there are a lot of wheelchair accessible folks that feel some kind of way about ICON, the international conference, and hearing impaired that don't feel that, like, we don't have an interpreter today. It would have been great if we had had an interpreter. That's one of the things we started doing with our Diverse Dialogues series that started last year when I was co-chair of the D&I committee. You have an interpreter for every session, that we have the language. So invisible minorities, I kind of reject that phrase, because if we don't reject it, Rina, I see you're shaking your head, we embrace it, they're minorities. It's not the case. All of us are critically important. Rina?
I just totally agree with you. If you're blind and you're Black, you're still Black. If you're in a wheelchair, you're still Black. If you're deaf, you're still Black. If you have MS, you're still Black. If you have fibromyalgia, you're still Black. And at the end of the day, no matter what title you have, you are still Black. I'm 51% European, first generation American, I'm still Black. So no matter what you are, no matter where you come from, if your skin is brown, or if someone says that you're brown or Black, you're still Black. We are part of everything. We touch everything. LGBTQIA, we touch everything. So you are correct in saying that, and it really sometimes gets to me. And I would like to add another thing. I think that people need to stop being in Black women's hair, okay? Let us wear our hair the way we want to. And I just appreciate Representative Anthony for putting out the Crown Act. And yes.
Is that the only one in the nation, Sarah? No, there's a lot more of the, okay.
No, we're moving across the country, but yeah, states are passing the Crown Act.
Awesome.
Can I jump in, Felicia?
Yeah.
To piggyback off what Rina said, again, when you think about actionable things, don't touch my hair. Don't touch my hair. Don't ask me if I wear a weave. Don't tell me I have good hair.
Because I do.
Right. So like, these are really simple things. Don't assume that I know everything about being Black, because I don't, like I'm not the Black Google. So like, it's just really like, those are really simple things when you talk about like, how can I be an ally in the workplace?
That's right.
Boom. Don't ask me what I am.
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to put it in the chat, race to dinner. I was talking to a company that's UK based. I don't know if anybody, show of hands, if you've heard of Race to Dinner. Well, it's this initiative that was begun in the UK where people and it's migrating all across the country. In New York, they got a lot of chapters and individuals who do that, wherein you purposefully pick a group of people who are diametrically opposed on issues or look different, and it's the race to dinner, and you have dinner and you have courageous conversations. I love that. I love that. I think it's a way for us to build bridges. I really do. So we're at 12:51 in the QA. I'm trying to watch the chat and the QA, folks, so y'all help me out. But the question from an anonymous attendee says, hello and thank you for your work. As PR professionals, our responsibility is often to our company's interest. For me, this has meant drafting and creating messages that push back against marginalized communities' voices and concerns. Oh, I shudder to think. What steps can people like me take to be anti-racist within a corporation where our values are pitted against our designated role to protect the brand? That's a tough one. Now, I can't tell you to quit, but because you got to pay the bills. I have some thoughts. I don't want to overtake. Does anybody have Shelly?
I'm not going to tell you to quit either, but I'm going to tell you life is short, and we spend the majority of our time with people who are not the ones that we are, the ones that we love, the people that we're doing the work for. And mental health is real, and feeling proud and happy to go to work. And
can I push? I have a feeling Tammy's got some points of view on that.
Oh, yep.
This is me being the bad moderator.
No worries.
You heard the phrase, well, you got to be in the game to change the game. How you feel about that, Tammy?
I'm piggybacking again off of Shelly, but also speak up. Don't be silent. Speak up. I feel like I have been in places by myself and no one would stand with me. And then don't place the burden on the company's DEI issues on the person of color that is there. I feel like that's also an issue. Don't expect your Black colleagues to lead the way in this kind of work. Again, that anti-racism comes from the top, but I have been in BIPOC sessions where Black people have told me they were the ones that had to write the statement after George Floyd's murder. They were not in comms, they were not in marketing, but they were the Black people. One person was a janitor, and he was sought out for his comments so that they could put a statement together. So
because they didn't have a point of view? Why?
Because they needed it to come from a Black person. It was very, so I've learned some things in this last year.
George Floyd is a human issue. It's human rights, not Black rights, white rights, green rights. So that is so hard for me to internalize, because when I see somebody who's brutalized, no matter what the color of their skin, my heart hurts. The other thing that I would say is, I believe this person that has this point of view is not alone. I will bet you that there are others who have this point of view. And this is an opportunity to have a courageous conversation with your leader. Go to the president, ask for counsel. I know that's bold, but though the risks go to those who, the rewards go to those who take the risks. There is an opportunity. And sometimes, not all the time, it's about seeking to understand and sharing a point of view. Shelley said it, don't be bold, don't be afraid. And there likely are others who feel the same way. So we are at 12:55. We're going to be going into something that I've ostensibly called the speed round. Reverend, I was going to call her Reverend. Sarah, we hadn't heard from you in a bit. You far from a reverend, is that fair? My husband's a minister. 30 to 60 seconds, something you want everybody in this group to understand about this moment we're in and the role of communicators.
So my district is majority white. And yet they took the chance on me to elect the first Black woman to represent them in the halls of power. And it would have been easy for me to say, I'm not going to introduce things like the Crown Act. I'm not going to lead with a social justice lens. I'm not going to introduce bills that disproportionately impact and would benefit people of color. But I've done that. And the reason I've done that is because I can't take the skin off, as Rina mentioned, and that notion of being bold, all of us have a role to play in terms of leading. And I know that's a lot to put on people of color, but let's face it, we are in positions for such a time as this. So it doesn't fall on us completely, but we should be in positions in which we can be as bold and innovative and creative and pushing our organizations forward. And then, so we just have to do that. And we don't want to look back at this time and say that we were not on the right side of history, that we did not lift up our voices, that we let folks play in our hair, that we let that racist comment pass us by, that we were not open to having conversations. We don't want to look back and say that.
And reverend, y'all.
Yeah, and literally, like, I always tease some of my elders in our family, and I literally tell them, did you really go to the march? Did you really, in the 60s, everyone says they went. Some folks stayed home and said, they're gonna be okay. I'm not losing my good job. Where do you wanna be? What do you want to say you actually did during this time?
She got me. We went to church on that, y'all. Rina, 30 seconds now. Remember, 30 seconds.
The doors of the church are open.
I just wanted to end with the comment about Chicago Mayor Lightfoot's decision to be selective on who she chooses one-on-one media interviews with. If you reverse that, Black people don't get never got interviews with the mayor. So I feel that she has the opportunity to interview with whom she feels comfortable with. And I'm all for it. I'm all for it. The only thing that I would say in closing is that put your advertising dollars into some BIPOC media sources and make sure that when you are looking for BIPOC organizations that you do your research. That's it for me.
All right, we got 60 seconds and I got to fit 2 in and then Jessica's got to go. So Tammy, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay. The one thing that I would want people to know is that the phrase being a strong Black woman, not a compliment. Allow us to be vulnerable. We shouldn't have to be strong all the time. We don't have superpowers. We are women, people. Be our ally, be supportive, lift us up.
Love that. Write that down. Shelly.
I would say that if someone, to Tammy's point earlier, if someone entrusts you enough to have a conversation with you about something that they're feeling, is not right for them in an organization or in life, come to that with an open heart and an open mind. And what I often see is when I try to have conversations with people, that the defensiveness comes in. And if you're coming to that conversation with a place of defensiveness, we're done.
Greg, Jessica, thank you for the opportunity. It's been wild. The floor is yours, Jessica.
Thank you so much for all of our participants. You are all absolutely incredible. I feel like I just blinked and the hour went by. So I really appreciate all of you joining this conversation and your unbelievable perspective, and for you being bold and brave enough to share your thoughts today. So I sincerely want to thank you. To our participants and people who joined us, the panelists have put their emails in the chat if you want to follow up with questions. CMPRSA will also be sharing this webinar. We've recorded it. This is an important conversation that we want to keep going. So we will be sharing from our social channels and encourage you all to do the same. So on a totally different note, we have exciting programming moving forward that will hope you be able to join us. We have a coffee hour next month with guest Lily Allen Dwayne and more. So thank you again for everyone for joining us, participating today. We truly appreciate you and your time, and I hope everybody has a safe and positive Memorial Day weekend. Thank you again.